Hello everyone and welcome to the University of Law podcast. I'm Amy Weir, a future pupil due to start pupillage at Exchange Chambers in March. Today I'm very pleased to be joined by Sophie Stevens to discuss the University of Law's conversion course, particularly the MA Law conversion course and the PGDL. Hello Sophie, how are you?
I'm good, thank you, Amy. How are you?
Not too bad, thank you. So I think it would be good to start from the very beginning. So what degree did you do prior to converting to law?
So I had a pretty strange route to the bar. Well, I feel it was a bit strange, but it actually doesn't feel like that much anymore. I actually did a drama and applied theatre degree for a year to start with, at the Royal Central School of Speech and Drama in London. Obviously with a view to theatrics, and did that for a year and then moved from that into a BA history degree at the University of Southampton, which I did for the full 3 years. After that, obviously, I applied to University of Law for the MA Law conversion course, which is in essence the PGDL with the extra element that also gives you the level 7 qualification for the MA.
So why is it that you decided, having done a history degree, to then convert to law?
I think it was a mixture of things. I mean, I definitely didn't know when I started the history degree that I wanted to do law. I knew that I liked theatre, obviously, and I knew that I liked academics. So I guess I chose history with a view to I like that academically, and that will give me the written platform to do something that will incorporate both a bit of theatre and a bit of academic challenge. And I think that's what sort of led me in the end to law. I started exploring the role of a barrister sort of at the end of the first year on the drama degree, and wasn't fully convinced that I could sort of do it at that point in time. And then once I sort of built up the skills and realised I could, do the academic side of things on the history degree, and I researched it a bit more, I realised that perhaps being a criminal barrister was a good option, which would incorporate a bit of acting, theatre. You know what I mean by that, even though that's quite a stereotype, I think, in some ways. But it had that element of the performance, and it also would challenge me academically. And then I obviously researched online how I would do that, and explored the options of doing the conversion course.
So would you say it's a more gradual process, kind of as you moved through the theatre and then through the degree, it was a gradual process?
Yeah, I think there's a lot of people, to be honest, that when they study law at undergraduate, they sort of have that, I want to be a solicitor or a barrister, or I want to be a lawyer. I'm not saying that everyone does that. A lot of people come to the end of their law degree and I'm sure they go, no, actually, I'm going to do something else. But I never thought I could be a barrister, to be quite honest. And it was definitely a gradual process of exploring what was necessary, what I needed to do. And obviously the conversion course was a portion of that was necessary in order to then move on to the bar course or the SQE should you want to be a solicitor. So it was a fluid process of figuring things out.
And you mentioned kind of the theatrics of the bar, but did you ever consider becoming a solicitor, or once you started thinking about law, was that always in the barrister direction?
I did. I think truthfully, I did consider it because it was a good way to learn that I definitely wanted to do the barrister side of things. So I did a short stint placement in like a little local law firm, shadowing a solicitor for a couple of days when I was doing my history degree, to figure out what his daily life was like. And then I did a mini pupillage to counteract that and see what a barrister's daily life was like. And it cemented my view that I wanted to do the bar rather than the solicitor's profession. But I think it's really important to explore both, because obviously then when you move on to, you don't have to decide before you move on to the PGDL or MA law conversion, unless you want to, because that will give you the platform to do either of the professions at the end of it.
And why is it that once you decided you wanted to do the MA Law conversion, why did you choose the University of Law?
Interestingly, it was mainly because they were really friendly. I went to an open day and I'll never forget it, because everyone was really lovely at the Guildford campus. And at that time, it was the welcomingness of the people, the knowledge that they provided me with. I also knew from experience with shadowing the solicitors, the solicitor and the barristers that I had done minis with, a lot of them had been to the University of Law in its old form, under its old name, and they sort of said they had a good experience there. And I definitely researched quite heavily online the structure of the course as well, which I quite liked, which was that I would be studying, I think it was 4 in the first portion and then 3 in the second, or one way round or the other. And I liked that they sort of split the modules in that way, so you were juggling enough to challenge yourself, but you were also given the time to not do all 7 in once, or at once I should say. So I liked that structure. I really liked the manuals that they provided us for each of the modules that were accessible online, and sort of talked you through each unit, and you would work through each week, and that was all of the things they discussed with me at the open morning. And everyone was just really friendly. The teaching staff were really friendly, and I just felt it was a place that I would feel included and would fit.
And a few people that I spoke to about kind of who are considering doing a conversion course have been concerned about the move from non-legal studies to legal studies, particularly given the course is only a year, because kind of essentially cramming a law degree into a year. How did you personally find that transition from legal studies, having come from a non-law background?
I found it all right. I think to this day, I always say, not that the BPC wasn't great too, but I always say, out of my legal studies, my favourite year was definitely the conversion year, because it was a variety of things which my brain quite likes. I'm neurodivergent with dyslexia, so I quite like to have a variety of things going on, and I don't tend to cope well when it's just one thing all the time. And obviously with history, it was a bit more one thing all at the time. We were doing a few different things, but you weren't sort of 1 minute in talking about assault and ABH, and the next minute talking about equity and trusts, which is what you're doing on the conversion course. And I think I was able to cope with that quite well, because I enjoyed that variety. Obviously, there's different difficulties in that you are learning a whole new type of language in some sense. There's terms such as ABH and things like that, but you get to get grips with it quite quickly, and the teachers break it down really well in that they build you. Each module sort of gets harder as it goes through. You don't start with the most difficult portion of that topic, so they give you time to understand things, and then they work you through it. So I really found it was quite a nice transition. And obviously with the MA element as well that I did, Amy, you had to do a bit more writing, like heavier essays in the examinations, and things like that. And obviously I cope with that really well, because my history degree was all long essay writing and essay style examination. So I didn't find that a problem at all. I definitely would say to people, obviously you are nervous coming into it thinking, I'm doing law now, having never touched it before, and it's going to be a lot, but it's completely doable. And if you've done an undergraduate in another subject, it gives you the skills and tools that you need in order to succeed on a conversion course anyway.
Yeah, I would completely agree with that. So I did the PGDL and also enjoyed the transition. I think it's kind of interesting what you said about history and that essay writing helping you then with the law conversion. And I think that can be said, like you touched on, Sophie, with other degrees. So, for example, I did politics and economics.
Yeah.
And the quite logical mathematical side of economics I also found helpful because of the kind of logical nature of working through legal problems. But then also the kind of essay style of politics also helped for the
Absolutely.
just general writing and argument. So I do think that regardless of what degree you do, it's a conversion course for a reason, because it's expecting you to kind of be bringing in different skills from that. And so the leap doesn't feel as big as you might expect.
For sure. You also get that benefit in class. I don't know if you found that as well, because obviously you're in a class with lots of people all having studied completely different things. I mean, I had a scientist, someone who had done chemistry in my class, which couldn't be further from history. And,
yeah.
They brought different thoughts to the table in class as well, which would help your learning and your development. And, all those skills and all those people went on to do amazing things as far as I'm aware now. So it definitely shows that what you end up doing with law anyway, being either a solicitor or barrister, the more different your background is, the more that can actually be a benefit in some ways.
Yeah, absolutely. And I also think it's quite nice being in a class with people that have done loads of different things, just from as well as a learning point, but also just a social point. It's quite nice.
Absolutely.
So you've touched on this a bit already, Sophie, but how did the MA Law conversion prepare you for your future studies on the bar practice course and your current career?
So the bar practice course, very, very straight to the point with me. It is very different to the conversion course. And there is it's a different structure, it's different skills. But the conversion course gives you those core elements that you need to take into the bar practice course and into your daily practice in order to be able to do the job that you eventually do. The core modules you do on the PGDL or MA Law conversion are the same principles that you will then apply at the basic level at the start of your career as a criminal barrister. So I have to talk about crime because crime is the area I practice in. So I can't speak for the other areas, but obviously I'm sure there'd be someone who would tell you exactly the same about wills or trusts. But those core principles come up every single day in practice. There's not really a month that goes by where I haven't spoken to someone who may be charged with a basic level assault, especially at the junior end of practice. And so those things I learned in the classroom about that and how that works in the conversion course obviously still goes into my practice to this day, because without that beginning knowledge I wouldn't have then been able to have built on that in the BPC at the bar practice course to then use and apply those skills in daily practice. So it is part of a bigger process. You have to give it time and thought, because eventually it feeds you into the skills that you're going to need every single day. I'm not sure if that answered the question, but I think I got close.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I mean, it's completely relevant, isn't it? I think is the point. Like it also gives you a broad you do a variety of areas of law. So not only would you have done crime, you'll have done other things like you touched on, for example, equity interests and wills and things like that. So it also helps give you a taste for what you might want to end up going into.
Absolutely. And just to touch on that, because you've mentioned equity and trust and things like that, I never thought I would need sort of to know about terms in equity and trusts and things like that ever again after I did the conversion course. And that's categorically not true, because in crime we deal with enforcement hearings and things like that with under POCA and things like that. So you still, other areas of law still bleed into your area of practice, and I'm sure that cross applies throughout all areas of the profession.
And again, you've touched on this, Sophie, and kind of about when it is you decided you wanted to be a barrister. But did you know when you commenced your conversion course at the bar was the route for you, or were you still kind of deliberating about whether you were going to go the barrister route, the solicitor route at that point?
So I knew when I went on the conversion course, and I think in some ways that was to my benefit, because I was able to utilise a lot of the University of Law's employability team and the support I had within the campus who did moots and things like that. So because I knew that I wanted to be a barrister, I really tried to get ahead of the game and start the process of trying to get to the bar at that point. So I did things like the campus moot. I did more mini pupilages. I actually even applied for pupillage during that year and had the support of the 2 bar representatives that were for my campus, and they helped me with the applications that I did choose to put forward, and things like that. So it was really beneficial for me to sort of know at that stage. And obviously then came the scholarship applications for the Inns of Court, and ULaw was able to help me, the University of Law, sorry, was able to help me with that as well. So they were, yeah, it was, I found it was good to make that choice at that point. I'm not saying that's what everyone has to do. If you're not sure, then you're not sure, and that's also completely fine, because there's lots of options that present themselves to you as you go through that conversion year. But I would say if you are not sure, do as much as you can alongside the conversion course. Do a moot, even if you're thinking, I want to be maybe a solicitor. That's still advocacy experience, and lots of solicitors do advocacy in the magistrates court and get their higher rights later on as well, so that experience can still help you. But I would say the conversion year is a year for experimenting, because you have not come from a law background, so a lot of it is a lot of firsts, and why not just take as many of those opportunities and do a first for everything in that year and test the waters.
Yeah, I completely agree. So I also knew that I wanted to go the bar route when I did the GDL, now the PGDL. And as you say, Sophie, and I think particularly because the bar course is so intense, that it's a really good year to try and get things like mooting, get things like any mini pupilages you still might need to get for when it comes to pupillage application time. But even if you're not sure, as Sophie said, I still think do these things, because say you do a moot, and that might help you decide that if the bar is for you. So not only will it help ensure you have a really good CV to go to the bar, it will also help you in your decision making, because if you enjoy that moot, you might think, okay, advocacy is the route for me. So absolutely try and get involved in things even on your GDL. And particularly, I mean, in my case, I don't know about you, Sophie, but I didn't do much legal experience at university. So I had to try and cram in quite a lot on my conversion course.
Yeah, I had never done a moot before, so that was definitely on the priority list. As something I realised I needed to do before moving on to the bar course. I think, as I said, I did a solicitor's shadowing for a couple of days, and I think 1 mini pupillage in my history degree. So I definitely tried to get a few bits more.
And you spoke earlier about kind of the gradual decision that you came to do the MA Law conversion and take the bar route. Was there anything in particular that was maybe really inspired you to take this career path? Was it maybe a mini pupillage, or was it just that kind of gradual process that you mentioned earlier?
Yeah, that's a really tough question. It's probably one I should know the answer to, because it's probably something that I got asked maybe multiple times in a pupillage. Had a lovely answer then, but I do think it was a gradual process for me. I definitely don't think I felt, as I said before, I didn't have a lot of faith that I could do this job. I wasn't particularly intelligent at school. I wasn't top of the class or anything like that. So it was a sort of journey of self-discovery, of realising, actually, I think this is really for me, and I really can do this, and I hope to be able to inspire others. I definitely think as well I had the thoughts of being dyslexic and whether I could do it because of that. And I think when I realised that actually that was one of the many powers I have and something different I could bring, it clicked for me. But I don't think there was one moment where I thought, wow, this is for me. I didn't sort of have the light bulb moment. It's they joke about wedding dress shopping, and they say you go and hunt forever or something like that, and you put it on and you just know. It wasn't that sort of moment for me ever. It was definitely just a journey of exploration and self-discovery, and building confidence, because not everyone always comes to this profession with a bundle of confidence thinking they're going to be incredible, and I think there's something quite nice about that as well. So that was definitely more it for me.
And moving back to when you then applied for the bar course, so you mentioned the Inns of Court scholarship and then applying for the bar course, did you, or how did you prepare for the bar practice selection event? And is there any advice that you'd give students who are going to be attending one?
Yeah, so the bar practice course selection event for me was in person. I believe they're now run online, but it's the same format as far as I'm aware. And in essence, the thing I did was I practiced some advocacy before I went. So I did some, I've just researched different things such as bail applications and plea mitigations. There's usually some good resources somewhere online. From what I remember, you get given a plea mitigation, and that's what you have to deliver. So it's a good idea to make sure that you look that up online, and make sure you have an idea of what that is before you come to the selection event. I think the main thing to remember is everything at the bar it is there to see you do well rather than to hinder you. They want to see your potential rather than a finished product. And it's really important that you go in sort of with an open mind as to that you're not probably going to be perfect. And that's absolutely okay, because the idea is it's there to select the people that have the potential to be barristers rather than people who are already barristers. And you don't need to be perfect in order to show that potential. So my advice is to look up some plea mitigations and bail applications, because you never know, and that's also really helpful for pupillage, especially with a view to crime. But definitely have a look at that, and practice if you can, just speaking and things like that, getting your speech at a good pace, getting really clear, concise answers. Try to take the ums out. I still struggle with that now, but anything that you can do helps. There's also a question portion of the selection events, and they'll ask you some questions, but again, they're not there to slip you up. I think it's really important to keep up to date with current affairs, so anything that's going on in the world that has a legal tinge to it, try and keep up on that. Twitter can be, or X as it's now called, I think, can be a great source of that information. And yeah, just don't over prep. Try not to take it too seriously, although it is important. They are nice people at the University of Law, and they want to see you succeed, and it is there just to see your potential.
Absolutely. I didn't know what a plea mitigation was when it came to my selection event. So absolutely looking for potential as opposed to the finished article. I think that's a really important point. So you've already given some great advice, Sophie, but is there anything else you want to add about general or specific advice for non-law graduates that are interested in qualifying as a barrister?
I think probably to take every day as it comes. It's quite easy to get overwhelmed with the whole legal process and see a lot of things that you really don't understand to start with. I mean, I had no idea what a mini pupillage was. All I knew was that I probably needed a couple of them in order to make an application later for something called pupillage, which again, I didn't really know what it was. But somehow I sort of got myself through the process, and I didn't have a huge amount of support until I went to the University of Law, who sort of understood everything, because I was on a history degree where everyone who my pastoral support was obviously didn't do law. So you kind of come at it at an angle where you are somewhat alone on a little expedition, wandering through the woods and trying to find your way through. But what I would say that's one bit of advice I would give myself now, is that there's a lot of resources out there that I really didn't know of, and listening to this podcast, hopefully some people have found this even a source of something. But do research, do look online, do go on LinkedIn, do see the different things that are being run that are a source of information that can help make that process feel less overwhelming and less like you are wandering in the woods on your own in the dark. Because now I think more than ever there is a real thrust of encouragement to try and get people into the legal professions, and I think you can really benefit from that.
Great, that's really useful advice. Thank you, Sophie, and thank you very much for joining us on the University of Law podcast. It's been really interesting and really useful for people considering doing a conversion course. If there's anybody that's listening interested in finding out more, there's more information on our website, or you can contact our admissions team. Thank you very much for listening, and please do tune in again soon.